The sun scorched the cliffs of Santa Cruz, California, casting a merciless glare over BlueSea Sanctuary's shimmering performance pool. Elise Moreau, a 34-year-old Orca trainer, stood poised at the water's edge, her wetsuit hugging her frame, her headset glinting in the light. Known worldwide for her serene presence and an almost otherworldly connection with Kayla, the park's largest orca, Elise was the beating heart of the marine park. For a decade, she had danced with giants, her performances drawing thousands to witness a bond that seemed to defy the very laws of nature. A human and a 6,000-pound predator moving in seamless harmony. But on a blistering June afternoon, before 800 stunned spectators, that dream shattered. In mere minutes, the pool turned red, and a truth the industry had buried for decades surfaced with bone-crushing force. This is the story of Elise Moreau, Kayla the Orca, and a tragedy that reshaped the world's view of captivity forever. The air was heavy with heat, the bleachers packed with families clutching lemonade cups, their faces flushed from the sun. Children waved handmade posters emblazoned with Elise and Kayla in vibrant, uneven letters, their excitement palpable. The harmony of the deep show, Elise's masterpiece, was the reason they had come. A breathtaking spectacle of synchronized leaps, spins, and trust between a woman and a killer whale. Backstage, Elise adjusted her headset, her dark hair pulled into a tight bun, her green eyes scanning the water's glassy surface. This wasn't just another performance, it was a milestone, marking 10 years of her extraordinary partnership with Kayla, the orca she called her soulmate. The finale promised to be unforgettable. Kayla would lift Elise high above the pool, balancing her on her rostrum in a pose that had become iconic, a living testament to their unbreakable bond. As the music swelled, a pulsing beat reverberating through the stadium, the gates slid open, and Kayla glided into view. Her black and white form sliced through the water, her towering dorsal fin cutting a perfect arc against the blue. The crowd erupted, phones raised to capture the magic, their cheers echoing off the concrete walls. Elise stepped forward, her hands extended, her voice soft, but commanding through the microphone. "Up, girl, let's go," she called, signaling the start of their carefully choreographed routine. But Kayla didn't move. She floated motionless in the pool's center, her pectoral fins twitching ever so slightly, her dark liquid eyes locked on Elise in a way that sent a shiver through the trainer's spine. Elise repeated the cue, her tone steady but laced with a flicker of unease. "Come on, Kayla, let's shine." The crowd held its breath, sensing a shift in the air. Something wasn't right. Then, without warning, Kayla surged forward, not toward the choreographed position beneath Elise, but to her side. Her massive body brushed against Elise's legs, a cold, heavy glide that sent a ripple of murmurs through the stands. Elise chuckled into the mic, masking her growing nerves. "She's feeling playful today," she said, her smile tight, almost forced. The audience laughed, reassured by her confidence. But before their laughter could fade, Kayla doubled back. In a blur of black and white, the orca struck. Her jaws clamped onto Elise's left arm with terrifying precision, yanking her into the water with a splash that sprayed the first row of spectators. A collective gasp swept the stadium, the sound sharp and jagged. For a fleeting moment, it looked like a stumble, a misstep in the routine, something that could be played off. Then the water churned violently, a frothy chaos of bubbles and motion. Kayla dragged Elise under, her powerful tail thrashing as she spun her trainer like prey caught in a riptide. Blood and bubbles erupted to the surface, staining the water a sickly red. Elise's scream, muffled beneath the waves, pierced the air for a heartbeat before silence swallowed it whole. The crowd froze, parents clutching their children, phones still recording, their faces pale with disbelief. Kayla surfaced, Elise's limp form dangling from her jaws, her wetsuit torn, her arm bent at an unnatural angle. Then the orca dove again, her rostrum slamming into Elise's chest with a crack that echoed like a gunshot across the stadium. Trainers on deck scrambled, their voices hoarse as they shouted Kayla's name, hurling weighted buoys into the pool in a desperate bid to distract her. The cheerful music, grotesquely out of place, looped for a few surreal seconds before someone cut it off. Spectators screamed, some leaping from their seats, others rooted in horror, unable to look away. "That's not part of the show!" a man shouted, his voice cracking with panic. Kayla thrashed again, dragging Elise deeper, her massive form churning the water into a crimson storm. Elise resurfaced briefly, her face ghostly white, her mouth forming a single desperate word. "Help!" Before Kayla yanked her back under, clamping onto her leg with bone-crushing force. A trainer blasted high-frequency tones through the underwater sound system, a last-ditch effort to deter the orca. But Kayla was relentless. Her eyes, once warm with connection, were cold, detached, as if she were reclaiming something stolen from her long ago. The attack lasted less than 2 minutes, but to those watching, it felt like an eternity. When Kayla finally released her, Elise floated to the surface, motionless. Her wetsuit hung in tatters, her arm twisted grotesquely, blood matting her dark hair and pooling around her. Her eyes, once bright with passion and purpose, stared vacantly at the cloudless sky. The crowd sat in stunned silence, the only sound the soft, rhythmic lap of water against the pool's edge. Paramedics rushed in, pulling Elise's body from the water, their chest compressions frantic but futile. A trainer sobbed uncontrollably into a radio, her voice breaking over the static. Kayla drifted to the pool's center, her massive form eerily still, her eyes fixed on the spot where Elise had been. The illusion of harmony was gone, shattered in a moment of raw, unfiltered violence, replaced by a truth too stark to ignore. Elise Moreau was no ordinary trainer. Born on the windswept shores of Brittany, France, she had felt the ocean's pull from a young age. While other children played with dolls or chased soccer balls, Elise spent hours watching waves crash against the rocky coast, dreaming of swimming alongside the giants of the deep. Her school notebooks were filled with sketches of orcas, their sleek forms drawn in the margins with meticulous care. To her, they weren't just animals. They were beings of grace, intelligence, and profound mystery, creatures that spoke a language she longed to understand. At 19, she left her small coastal town for a marine mammal training program in the United States, trading the familiarity of home for a world of grueling work and endless possibility. She scrubbed tanks until her hands blistered, prepared buckets of thawed fish in the pre-dawn chill, and endured the relentless discipline of daily training. But her quiet determination and uncanny ability to read animal body language set her apart from her peers. Trainers noticed how she could sense a shift in an animal's mood with just a glance, how she moved with a calm that seemed to soothe even the most restless creatures. By 34, Elise had risen to become the lead trainer at BlueSea Sanctuary, a prestigious marine park nestled among Santa Cruz's rugged cliffs. Her signature show, Harmony of the Deep, was a phenomenon, a carefully choreographed ballet that drew crowds from across the globe. Children waved posters with her name scrawled in bright colors, tourists clamored for seats to her performances, and colleagues spoke of her in reverent tones. But what made Elise truly extraordinary wasn't her showmanship. It was her bond with Kayla, the park's largest orca. The two were inseparable, their connection so profound it seemed to transcend the boundaries of species. "Elise doesn't train Kayla," one coworker remarked, watching them glide through a rehearsal. "They speak the same language." To the public, it was nothing short of magical, a woman and a beast united by trust. Every leap, every synchronized spin, every gentle nudge of Kayla's rostrum against Elise's foot told a story of harmony, a narrative so compelling it silenced any questions about what might happen if that trust ever broke. Kayla, however, was no ordinary orca. She hadn't been born in a marine park or raised with human hands. In 1995, in the frigid waters off Russia's Kamchatka Peninsula, a pod of orcas swam their seasonal migration, their movements guided by ancient instinct and family bonds. The silence of their journey was shattered by the roar of speedboats. Nets tore through the water, slicing the pod apart. Kayla, then a juvenile, was separated from her mother, her panicked calls echoing as she was dragged to the surface, sedated and loaded into a transport tank. The operation was brutal, efficient, and entirely legal. For the next several years, Kayla was shuffled between holding facilities, trained and conditioned to perform despite her moody temperament. Early reports documented troubling behavior, periods of food refusal, long stretches of unresponsiveness, and in one chilling incident, a sudden tail strike that left a trainer with broken ribs. These events were labeled anomalies, filed away in dusty cabinets, never to reach the public. When BlueSea Sanctuary acquired Kayla at age 12, they knew of her difficult temperament but saw her as a star in the making. She was enormous, powerful, and visually striking, perfect for the spotlight. In private memos, executives noted her high commercial value, while publicly they branded her a gentle giant, adjusting to her new home. Elise saw something different. To her, Kayla was misunderstood, not dangerous, a creature whose intelligence and depth demanded respect, not control. Over the years, Kayla seemed to soften under Elise's care, responding to her voice with an affection that stunned even seasoned trainers. Their bond was extraordinary, almost spiritual, a connection that went beyond training. While other trainers relied on whistles and target polls, Elise used only her voice, her presence, her unshakable belief in Kayla's heart. In an interview, her hand resting gently on Kayla's smooth back, she said, "She listens to my heart." The quote made headlines, painting a picture of a woman who had bridged the gap between human and wild. It made people believe in the impossible, but belief can be a dangerous thing. Behind the polished routines and perfect smiles, there were cracks in the facade. Kayla's behavior wasn't always predictable. During rehearsals, she hesitated. A spin completed a fraction too late, a breach refused altogether. She held prolonged eye contact that felt unfamiliar, her rostrum dipping lower than usual, her movements tinged with a subtle tension. Elise brushed these moments off with a smile, her optimism as unyielding as ever. "She's just moody today," she'd say, her voice light but firm, as if willing the unease away. To her, these weren't signs of danger, but proof of Kayla's emotional complexity, a testament to the depth of their bond. But to a few close colleagues, worry began to bloom like a storm cloud on the horizon. James Lynn, a junior trainer with a keen eye, noticed shifts in Kayla's body language during rehearsals. The angle of her turns was sharper, her jaw popping more frequent, her movements heavy with unspoken tension. "You could feel it," he later recalled, his voice low. "She was holding something back, like a coiled spring." He brought it up once cautiously to Elise, choosing his words carefully to avoid overstepping. "Have you noticed Kayla's been off lately?" he asked, gesturing toward the pool. Elise's response was immediate, her tone firm but kind. "I know her better than anyone," she said, her green eyes steady, unwavering. And that was the truth that made it all so dangerous. Elise did know Kayla better than anyone, but even the deepest understanding can be clouded by love, by pride, by the desperate need to believe in a dream. Kayla's past was a shadow that loomed large, no matter how deeply buried. She had been torn from a world where orcas swim thousands of miles, guided by family, instinct, and the ancient rhythms of the sea. No amount of fish rewards, soothing commands, or concrete pools could erase that fracture. Some called it trauma, others an instinct waiting to resurface. Internal reports hidden from the public painted a troubling picture. Kayla had shown signs of frustration for years, jaw popping during feeding sessions, persistent separation behavior after shows, even moments of unexplained agitation, like ramming the pool wall after a performance, her eyes wide with stress, her vocalizations sharp and continuous. These were classic signs of distress in orcas, but management dismissed them as routine behavior variability. In private emails, executives wrote, "Too valuable to sideline. We'll monitor, don't escalate. Elise can handle her." They saw Kayla as a star, Elise as her keeper, and the show as too profitable to question. Elise, too, believed she could handle Kayla, her trust built on years of love and discipline. But sometimes the more tightly we hold on to something, the more likely it is to slip away. The morning after the attack, BlueSea Sanctuary was unrecognizable. The gates were chained shut. Security guards paced the empty walkways, their faces grim under the weight of what had happened. News vans clustered outside the entrance, reporters shouting questions into microphones, their cameras trained on the locked gates. Inside, the pool where Elise had died lay still, its surface a deceptively calm mirror reflecting the cloudless sky. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the occasional splash of water as Kayla swam slow, endless circles. An investigation launched within hours, with officials from the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, animal welfare inspectors, and marine biologists descending on the facility like a storm. What began as a public relations crisis quickly spiraled into something far darker, a reckoning that would unravel decades of carefully curated illusions. Leaked documents painted a damning picture. Incident reports, some dating back 8 years, revealed a pattern of ignored warnings about Kayla's behavior. There were aggressive lunges during feeding sessions, refusals to follow commands, and moments of intense agitation after performances, particularly those with large, raucous crowds. One report described Kayla ramming the pool wall repeatedly after a show, her vocalizations sharp and continuous, her eyes wide with a stress that seemed almost palpable. Another noted a near miss during a feeding session, where Kayla's jaws snapped shut inches from a trainer's hand. These incidents were downplayed, filed away, and kept from the public. In private correspondence, park executives wrote, "She's too valuable to bench. Elise can handle her. She's the only one who can." The words, cold and calculated, revealed a system that prioritized profit over precaution, image over safety, and spectacle over truth. Whistleblowers began to step forward, their voices trembling with guilt and grief. A former trainer, who had left BlueSea Sanctuary months before the tragedy, gave a chilling interview to a local news outlet. "Kayla wasn't just acting out, she was unraveling," he said, his eyes haunted. "We all saw it, the tension in her movements, the way she'd stare after shows. Elise trusted her too deeply, loved her too much to see it." He paused, his voice breaking. "We should have spoken up louder." Elise's family, heartbroken and furious, demanded accountability. Her parents, their faces etched with grief, shared journal entries Elise had written in the weeks leading up to the attack. The pages were filled with her elegant handwriting, detailing Kayla's strange behavior. Hesitant spins, prolonged silences, moments of uncharacteristic stillness. Elise attributed it to the heat, to stress, to anything but danger. In one haunting entry, she wrote, "If I can't reach her, maybe no one can." The words, read aloud at a press conference, hung in the air like a ghost, a testament to a woman whose love for Kayla had blinded her to the wildness she could never tame. Public outrage erupted like a tidal wave, sweeping across California and beyond. Protests sprang up outside marine parks, with crowds holding signs that read "Captivity Kills" and "Free Kayla." Petitions to end orca captivity gathered millions of signatures in mere days, shared across social media platforms with hashtags like #Justice for Elise and #End the Shows. Elise became a symbol, not just of tragedy, but of betrayal by a system that had exploited her trust, her talent, and her love for the ocean. BlueSea Sanctuary issued a brief statement, its words carefully measured. "We are heartbroken by Elise's loss. She was family. We are cooperating fully with authorities." But the statement rang hollow, drowned out by the public's fury. The leaked documents, the whistleblower testimonies, the undeniable footage of the attack. It all painted a picture of a system that had chosen profit over precaution, silencing red flags until it was too late. The tragedy didn't fade into the news cycle. Networks replayed the horrifying footage. The moment Kayla struck, the red spreading through the water, the screams of the crowd, the silence that followed. It wasn't just another accident. It was a reckoning, a moment that forced the world to confront the cost of keeping wild creatures in concrete cages. Candlelight vigils bloomed outside BlueSea Sanctuary, the gates covered with flowers, photographs, and handwritten notes. One, scrawled in a child's unsteady hand, read, "She gave her heart to the ocean, and the system drowned her." Elise became more than a trainer. She became a martyr, a symbol of compassion betrayed, of what happens when love for the wild is twisted into a spectacle for profit. Animal rights organizations seized the moment, reigniting campaigns that had long simmered in the background. Billboards appeared along California highways, their messages stark: "Captivity kills. Free Kayla." Advocacy groups flooded social media with images of Elise and Kayla, juxtaposing their joyful performances with the grim reality of the attack. Within weeks, lawmakers in California introduced the Orca Protection Act, a bill aimed at banning the breeding, sale, and performance of captive orcas. Public hearings were packed, with citizens testifying about the cruelty of captivity, their voices trembling with emotion. Elise's parents took the stand, holding up her torn, blood-stained wetsuit, its fabric a silent witness to the tragedy. "We don't want vengeance," her mother said, her voice steady despite the tears streaming down her face. "We want change. We want no one else to lose what we've lost." The room fell silent, the weight of their grief palpable. Inside BlueSea Sanctuary, Kayla swam alone. Her performances were canceled, her pool off limits to trainers. She circled the tank for hours, her movements slow and deliberate, surfacing only to breathe. What she felt, what she remembered, no one could truly know. Some called her a killer, their voices dripping with fear or anger. Others called her a victim, a creature forced into a life that was never hers to live. A janitor passing her tank late one night later recounted a moment that chilled him. Kayla floated motionless at the surface, her eyes fixed on the empty bleachers where Elise used to stand, waving to the crowd. "She hadn't moved for hours," he said, his voice heavy with unease. "It was like she was waiting for her to come back." Elise's legacy stretched far beyond the sanctuary's walls. Her name was etched into a bronze memorial near the entrance, a simple plaque that read, "Elise Moreau, who loved the ocean and its creatures." But her impact was far greater than stone. Schools across the country began rethinking marine park field trips, their principals citing the tragedy as a wake-up call. Families stopped buying tickets, their enthusiasm replaced by unease. Celebrities, once silent on the issue, lent their voices to the cause, amplifying a global movement born not from hatred of orcas, but from a painful new understanding. Even the strongest bond can break when it's built in a prison. The movement grew, fueled by Elise's story and the undeniable truth it revealed. Marine parks across the world faced declining attendance, their once-packed stadiums now half-empty. Documentaries about orca captivity surged in popularity, their narratives echoing the same question. How had we convinced ourselves this was entertainment? Scientists, too, weighed in, publishing studies on the psychological toll of captivity on orcas, shorter lifespans, increased stress, behaviors unseen in the wild. One marine biologist, who had studied Kayla's pod years before her capture, spoke of the orca's life in the wild. "She was part of a family, a culture, a language we can't begin to understand. Taking her was like ripping a child from her home. We can't be surprised when that pain comes back." Elise had dreamed of connection, of a harmony that bridged the gap between human and wild. She believed she could reach Kayla's heart, that their bond could overcome the confines of a concrete tank. But that dream died in the same water where it was born, leaving behind a question too loud to ignore. How many more must die before we stop calling this entertainment? The Orca Protection Act gained traction, its supporters growing by the day. Coastal communities, once dependent on marine park tourism, began exploring new ways to celebrate the ocean. Whale watching tours, conservation programs, educational centers that honored the wild rather than caging it. Elise's story became a catalyst, a spark that ignited a global conversation. Her parents, though grieving, became advocates, speaking at rallies and sharing their daughter's story with anyone who would listen. "She loved Kayla," her father said at one event, his voice thick with emotion. "She believed in her, in what they could be together. But she was betrayed, not by Kayla, but by a system that let her believe it was safe." Their words resonated, cutting through the noise of corporate defenses and half-hearted apologies. BlueSea Sanctuary, once a beacon of family fun, became a symbol of failure, its name synonymous with tragedy. Kayla remained in her tank, a silent figure at the center of the storm. Visitors were no longer allowed to see her, the pool area cordoned off with security tape. Trainers, once her companions, kept their distance, their faces marked by grief and guilt. Some whispered that Kayla's behavior had changed since the attack. She swam slower, ate less, spent hours floating at the surface, her breaths heavy and deliberate. Marine biologists debated her fate. Release to the wild was risky, given her years in captivity, but keeping her in the tank seemed crueler still. Animal rights groups pushed for a sanctuary, a coastal reserve where she could live out her days in a semblance of freedom. But for now, she remained a prisoner, her massive form a stark reminder of the cost of captivity. Years later, the impact of that June afternoon lingered. Marine parks closed or rebranded, their orca shows replaced by virtual reality exhibits or educational programs. The Orca Protection Act passed in California, setting a precedent for other states and countries to follow. Elise's name became a rallying cry, her story taught in classrooms as a cautionary tale about humanity's relationship with the wild. Her parents established a foundation in her name, funding ocean conservation and advocating for the end of marine mammal captivity. Elise wanted to understand the ocean, her mother said at the foundation's launch. She wanted us all to understand it. Let's honor her by listening to what the ocean is telling us. The tragedy of Elise Moreau was more than a loss. It was a revelation. It exposed the fragility of trust built in captivity, the danger of ignoring a wild creature's nature, and the complicity of a system that prioritized profit over lives. Elise loved Kayla, poured her heart into their bond, and paid the ultimate price. Kayla, in turn, was no villain. She was a prisoner, her instincts caged but never erased. Their story, once a beacon of hope, became a warning, a call to rethink what we ask of the wild and what we owe it in return. If Elise's story moves you, don't let it fade. Share it. Talk about it. Ask yourself, should orcas like Kayla live in concrete tanks for our amusement? How many more lives, human or animal, must be lost before we open our eyes? Your voice could be the ripple that becomes a wave, the change Elise's life and death demand. If this story grips you, subscribe, like, and share this video with friends. We bring you true wildlife stories that demand to be remembered, understood, and learned from. Respect the wild, and we'll see you in the next video.